Today, I'll be telling you about 5 steps you can take to be accepted by your dream school. In essence, what we'll be doing is giving you a process that if you follow will ensure that your strongest application emerges. And this process really is at the core of what MBA Prep School teaches our students. So before we discuss the 5 steps, I'll give you a little more background about MBA Prep School. As Eric told you, MBA Prep School at mbaprepschool.com is an online learning community that teaches aspiring MBAs like you how to build outstanding applications. Now, you guys may or may not know this, but a whole boutique consulting industry has sprouted up over the last 6 or 7 years called MBA Admissions Consulting. And I'll let you in on a little secret. It's important for you to know this. Your competition may be hiring admissions consultants and paying anywhere from $2,000 to, I've heard as much as $10,000 for help building a great application. Now, I don't have anything against admissions consultants. We don't have anything against admissions consultants. In fact, I've been one for the past 4.5 years. But last year, my co-founder, Chris, and I, you'll meet Chris a little bit later in the call, Chris and I started thinking, what if we could use the internet to deliver a series of videos that would teach applicants the technique that admissions coaches use to help their clients build outstanding applications. And instead of charging a few $1,000s, we charge a few $100s. And that's the idea behind MBAprepschool.com. You're seeing our landing page, our homepage there on the screen. We teach MBA candidates who sign up with us how to optimize every step of their application process. So that's the application forms, the essays, of course, resume, reference letters, interviews, really the entire package. Now, as I said, there are 5 steps at the core of our process. We call it a prep steps process. And that brings us to today's topic, which is the 5 steps to being accepted by your dream school. So let's take a look at those 5 steps now. So the 5 steps to being accepted by your dream school are foundation building, capabilities building, strategy formulation, execution, and because we really see the MBA application process as a marathon, not a sprint, we call our 5th step the last mile. So what I'm going to do is go through our 5-step program and give you a bunch of tips that you can use along the way to ensure that you build an application that really impresses admissions officers. My presentation is going to last around 20 minutes. And by the way, if you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and ask them. Chris is going to be responding to your questions kind of as the moderator in the background. So if you've got questions as I go along about any of the things I'm presenting, go ahead and then put your questions in. We're also going to do a Q&A session at the end, which Chris will moderate, and I'll answer your questions directly. So keep those in mind, and Chris will be collecting questions throughout the presentation. So let's get started. Now, the first thing you may notice on your screen is that we suggested a time frame for each of the MBA prep steps. So this timeline, it's under ideal circumstances. I've worked with clients who had 4 weeks to apply, and we just moved through the steps a whole lot faster. You'll find there's certain things though. If you do have the advantage of time, you can take advantage of those and build a stronger application. So the MBA prep steps, where did they come from? Well, they were really inspired by a conversation I had with a former admissions board member from Harvard Business School. And he told me that a successful application to a highly competitive MBA school didn't start a few weeks before the application deadline. It really started a few years before the deadline, if you can believe it. I mean, his point was that by the time the application deadline was in sight, a few weeks away, everything was pretty much a given. The candidate's academic record, the GMAT score, resume, and even the experiences that they write about in their essays. Now, the message is that you need to start gathering the raw materials and building the foundation for your application long before it's time to sit down and put pen to paper or more likely fingers to the keyboard. And that's why our first step down at the bottom is foundation building. So when you're 12 months or more from applying, again, under ideal circumstances, you can begin building the foundation for your future application. Now, foundation building begins with self-assessment. Now, what does self-awareness have to do with getting into business school? A lot, as it turns out. Business school admissions officers believe that self-aware individuals are going to eventually be more effective leaders. Now, so if I asked you right now, if I was sitting across from you and I asked you what motivates you, or what your 3 greatest strengths are, or what your values are, what values are important to you, would you have an answer ready? So if you haven't invested time in self-assessment, probably not, but you're going to need to. So there are tons of great books out there and resources that can guide you through a self-assessment process, a strengths measurement process. In fact, on our site, we've assembled a lot of these and linked to them, and so members of our site have access to those. But going to a bookstore, doing some research on the internet, I think you'll find a lot of great resources to spend on the self-awareness phase. The next step is relationship building, and this is another step really that can't be rushed. So my question here is, can you name 3 people right now who would happily write you a business school reference letter saying that you're the top 10% of professionals they've managed throughout their career? If you want to go to a top-tier school, you're going to really need those kinds of supporters, those kinds of fans, those kinds of relationships. So, some candidates, some applicants feel that there's something disingenuous about systematically cultivating relationships with people who can eventually write their reference letters and help them get into school. Now, my philosophy is that if you wait until you need these people to start connecting with them, then it can be disingenuous. It can be too systematic. So the point here, the message here is developing those relationships over time means that you're going to have the opportunity to be of service to them in some way, those references, long before you ask them to help you. That's why relationship building is a second step in our foundation building process. Now, step 3. Just about every school you apply to is going to ask you about your career goals. So you'll want to start your career planning work long before it's time to sit down and write that career goals essay. Now, if you already have your short-term and long-term career goals defined, that's great. If not, I encourage you to start your career research well in advance. You want to develop a statement of career purpose, which is the bigger picture. Start talking to people, as many people as you can, about possible dream jobs, things that get you excited and interested. Talk to them about what they're doing and how they became successful. This is really collecting all sorts of information in the career planning phase that eventually is going to find its way into your essays and into your interview responses. And I find that career goals, setting those career goals, it's an aspect of the application, and writing about those career goals, it's an aspect of the application that a lot of candidates struggle with. So really, what we've done at MBA Prep School is we've developed a step-by-step career planning process for our students, and it's a great resource if you need help in this area. In the months and the years before you apply, you need to start thinking like an admissions officer and identifying the strengths and weaknesses in your candidacy. That way you can take proactive steps before you apply to reinforce your strengths and counteract your weaknesses. Remember, we're still at step 1 here, which is 12 or more months before you apply. So you have some time, if you fall into that category, to figure out what your weaknesses are and how you're going to counteract those weaknesses. Don't just write yourself off for a top-tier MBA program because you have a low GPA or a less than stellar resume at the moment. If you've got enough lead time, there's things you can do to address those weaknesses in your academic profile, your resume, you can even start building your leadership portfolio. For example, to bolster your academic profile, scoring well in the GMAT certainly can make a difference, and so can taking additional college classes. I've had clients that have gone back and taken a college calculus class and done well to really show that they have the analytical ability. So the point is building the foundation for a great application. There's a number of things you can do. Resume, for instance. Take on stretch assignments at work. You need to be racking up achievements that you can feature in your resume, because ultimately you're going to need to send that resume in, and that's going to be a primary source for admissions officers about what you've achieved in your career. If you don't have the opportunity to be a leader at work, and I know that a lot of us fall into that category in our early career, we're an analyst, we're supporting a team, we're not necessarily leading a team. Join a community service organization. Find an issue or a cause that you really care about and work towards it. The thing I'm talking about here is really a step in building what we call the leadership portfolio. And if you're applying to art school, you're gonna present a portfolio of your artwork. If you're applying to business school, really, what are they interested in? They're interested in your leadership portfolio. So you need to be taking on leadership challenges at work and outside of work. That's a really important step in strengthening your candidates. So moving on, we've got, in addition to self-awareness, I talked about self-awareness up front, foundation building is also about building school awareness. And, I know you guys know this, but too many candidates rely too heavily on the magazine rankings, the periodical rankings of the schools, and really what other people have to say. You should apply here, you should apply there. You need to invest a great deal of time and effort in school due diligence to determine which schools are the best match for your career goals, your academic goals, and even your cultural expectations, where you feel like you might fit. And the time invested here in the foundation building stage in school awareness means that you're going to be making the best informed choice of schools when it comes time to apply. But also, as we'll talk about a little bit later, you're collecting this research over time about why you want to apply to that school and the reasons that you share when you write the essay, because a lot of schools are going to say, hey, why are you applying to Wharton? Why are you applying to our school? You're going to have answers to share with them about why you're applying to the program. Now, finally, I think it's best to get the GMAT and the other standardized tests completed in this phase of your application, in the foundations building phase. So, in the final weeks and months, and I've definitely worked with clients who've had to fight their way through this. They're still studying for the GMAT while they're trying to write their essays and also hold down a full-time job. And you just don't want to worry about having to study that test still looming over you. You give yourself all the time you can to do the heavy lifting required to build a great application. Okay? So that's foundation building. Let's talk about step 2, capabilities building. So now we're in the 6 to 12 months before you're applying. And, this is where you'll decide which schools you want to apply to and progress from that foundation you've built to acquiring the capabilities you're going to need when you actually sit down to write the application. So during this 6-month period, one of your primary objectives is to intensify your school research and really make that selection of which schools you're going to apply to. So I've said it before, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you got to go beyond the magazine rankings. You have to go beyond the stereotypes and find the schools that are the best match for you. And at MBA Prep School, all our students go through an intensive period of school due diligence. And that's because the case you build about why you're applying to a particular school is going to be central to your essay. It's going to be central to your interview answers, because admissions committees are going to expect you to have personal and specific answers about why you want to be part of their program. And look, you were ranked number 1 in Business Week. That answer is just not going to cut it. Okay? So enough said about that. To choose your list of final schools, I think you should attend information sessions and, if at all possible, visit the schools that make your short list. School visits are critical, not just because your name is going to go on, a record somewhere in the admissions office, but really because things like the culture of the school, the campus dynamics, they're impossible to ascertain from afar or by And also a quick tip about school visits. If you're planning to apply in round one deadlines are about beginning of October, mid-October, you're going to need to conduct your school visit in the academic year prior to submitting your application if you want to visit the school, while it's in session. And that's obviously the ideal situation. You can sit in on a class. You can interact with other students. Visiting during the summer when the school's not in session just isn't as rich an experience. While you're doing this, and this is part of visiting school, keep a journal of your research. Take notes about who you meet, and what you learn, and what impresses you. Those firsthand observations are going to be many times more powerful in your essays or in an interview than just quoting the school's website. Everybody can quote the school's website. You'll have firsthand observations. Now, the third aspect of capability building, and it's really unique to MBA prep school's process, is the ability our students have to identify each school's fit qualities, quote unquote fit qualities. So the general qualities that top-tier MBA programs value are fairly well understood and intuitive. Things like leadership and teamwork, a global outlook. But what we found is, in addition to these general qualities, schools tend to have certain qualities that they value more than others, and we call those fit qualities. You might consider these the highest common denominators among students who are accepted. And it's your job to identify what these fit qualities might be, because the school isn't going to just send you a definitive list with a ribbon on top. Here are our fit qualities. Instead, you've got to be listening carefully when admissions officers or professors or alums you meet, or even current students say things like, intellectual vitality. It's really important to our school, or we're looking for students who possess drive and the ability to defend their beliefs. An admissions committee, admissions officer might say. So listening for signals like those is very, very important, because they're going to help you customize your application, right? Customize your resume, your essays, your interview answers, because you want to feature those qualities that the schools value most. That's how you prove that you fit. Now, we often compare an MBA application to a marathon. I said that up front. And at the capabilities building stage, you want to progress from general conditioning, right, to building specific muscle groups that are going to get you to the finish line in that marathon. So the most important of these, if we were in class, I'd ask you to raise your hand and tell me what you think the most important of these is. The most important of these muscles are your writing muscles, okay? So if the last essay you wrote was in college, it's time to start hitting the writing gym. And at MBA prep school, our students actually participate in an essay writing boot camp. We call it a boot camp before they start writing. So that's to build their writing muscles up, improve their writing skills, and that gets them ready to tackle the application essay questions. Along the same lines, application essay questions for the next application season are generally released in June or early July, so about 3 or 4 months before the deadline. But the truth is the questions don't change all that much from year to year. So even if you're 6 to 12, in kind of the 6 to 12 month period that we're talking about here, you can begin familiarizing yourself with past year's questions. And even brainstorming some answers to some of the commonly asked questions, like what are your short-term and long-term career goals? We talked about getting your career planning up front, so you'd be ready for that. So starting work on some of the commonly asked questions is a good idea. Now, the marathon's starting gun really sounds on the day that you sign up for your online application, right? That's the moment you're saying, hey, I'm in, here I go. So you sign up for your online application account, you're really starting the process. Now, I suggest you create those online accounts as early as possible. Get your email in there. That way you're going to be receiving notifications about school events and information sessions in your area that you might not know otherwise. So sign up early for your online application account as early as possible. And another useful step, by the way, sign up for news feeds. A lot of the admissions officers, for instance, director at Harvard Business School. She writes a blog, and there's a lot of great information that's going to keep you up to date and then answer some of your more common application questions. So those blogs, especially the admissions officers' blogs, are a great thing to sign up. So now we're going to move from the foundation and capabilities building into strategy formulation, and this is really this is when you're kind of starting the home stretch to those application deadlines, about 3 to 6 months from the deadline. You're really starting to put together your application strategy. So let's talk about what that is. And your application strategy, I really think of it as a communication strategy, or an executive summary of your answers to the fundamental questions that almost all MBA applications ask. Those questions, by the way, are questions like, are you a leader? You're going to have to prove, the answer is yes, of course, you want to prove that you're a leader, but you're going to have to answer that question and provide evidence that you're a leader. What are your career goals? What have you achieved professionally? Why are you applying to our school, as we've talked about? And the last one, the fifth question that I think you need to be ready for at the application strategy phase is, what can you contribute to our community? This is an admissions officer, an essay question where they say, hey, what do you bring to the table? These questions that I just read through, they're not the only questions that admissions officers want answered, but we believe they are the essential ones, and that's why we include them in our application strategy. So the interesting thing about them, questions like, are you a leader, what are your career goals, it seems like, well, that seems sort of simple, right? I just tell them, short term I want to do this, and long term I want to do that, and then I move on to the next essay question. But in truth, answering these questions is a lot trickier than you might think. So the goal of your application strategy work is have a clear, concise, compelling answer to each of those questions. Now, by the way, if you would like help on these questions, I talk about them in links we have a free course at MBAprepschool.com. You can sign up just by visiting our site. And I go through each of these questions in the application strategy questions. I talk about what admissions committees members are looking for, and I really show the audience how to build impressive responses that are uniquely their own. So I encourage you to check that out. Again, it's free to visitors of our site. Now, by the time you reach the application strategy phase in your process, you've hopefully established those relationships that I talked about back in the foundation building stage, right? Excellent relationships with your superiors and mentors, right? You've had it in mind that you're going to be applying to business school. You've made sure you've shown up for them and been there when they've needed you. Now, it's their turn to be there for you. So about 3 months before the deadline, you want to meet with the people that are on your reference letter short list. Gauge their enthusiasm for your plans to apply. Determine which one of them, you might have a short list at this point, but haven't chose the final 2 or 3. Determine which one of these colleagues, these supervisors, might be the one to write you that top 10% recommendation letter. And does it really have to be top 10%? Do they have to go that far? Well, you logically speaking, if the schools you're planning to apply to accept only the top 10%, or let's say the top 15 or 20% of the applicants, your reference letters need to build the case that this is where you stand relative to your peer group. That's why, again, building these relationships is so important. Okay, so now the first step in implementing your application strategy, right? We've done the strategy work, and that's is to build your MBA application resume. Now, resume experts are, if you're applying to a job, would say, tailor your resume for each job you're applying to. And the same holds true for an MBA application resume, right? You want to tailor it to the school that you're applying to. So this goes back to those fit qualities that I talked about. And I told you about a moment ago. So resume real estate is really precious, right? You only have a page or maybe two, but really, one page if you've only been out of school for 3 or 4 years. So you've got to use that space on the resume page to support the themes and the qualities and the application strategy that you've developed. And so that's why the MBA application resume is. It takes some time. It takes some time to build and do it right. But it's really, I call it kind of the first implementation step. You're moving into execution, right? You figure out what you want to say. Your resume is one of the first tools that you'll use to say it. Now, at least one school you're applying to is going to ask you to connect the dots between your career progress, right, what you've done in the past, your career aspirations, and your motivations for pursuing an MBA. So remember, right now we're in kind of the 3 to 6 months, closing in on about 3 months before the deadline, and you want to put these start to write out your personal state, right? That's where you talk about your career progress, your career goals, why you need an MBA. There's no reason to wait till the application deadlines or the applications are published. You're going to get asked this, if not in an essay, at least in the interview. So start putting your thoughts down on the page and writing that essay. In fact, the free lecture I mentioned about the 5 fundamental questions, we talk about how to build the content for your personal statement. So now 3 to 4 months before the deadline, this is what we've all been waiting for, right? Those application essay questions are published. And we want to make sure that everyone out there in the Meet the GMAT audience is, pays careful attention to the fine print on the school's application policies. Right? I really stress this, and be as diligent as a tax lawyer who's looking for a loophole. Okay, it's just going to be tragic if all this preparation work you've been doing, you've been had it in mind to apply to MBA school for years. You put together this brilliant application strategy, and then you get shifted into the ding pile because you didn't read the directions. You didn't. You submitted 2 reference letters and they asked for 3, or you didn't send an important transcript out. So read those policies careful. I mean, it's a little thing, but surprisingly, it'll trip a lot of people up. So read those application forms, study them very carefully. So now we're moving into the final 3 months before the deadline, and that's really when execution, you shift into high gear, into execution mode on your essays, your recommendation letters, and your interview preparation. So think about it for a moment. If you've been with me here we're in our 4th step. If you've been doing all this preparation and you think about the edge you're going to have over your competition at this point, right? They're just kind of I just found out the applications are ready. I guess I should think about what I'm going to do. They dive in, they start writing their essays, and then they start scratching their heads about recommendation letters. You're going to have a huge head start if you followed this timeline, right? And so let's talk about execution, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Now, back to housekeeping details. This is a housekeeping detail that trips a lot of applicants up, and that's just submitting all of the paperwork, right? There's a number of little pieces and components that you need to send in. Make sure you get all that stuff together ahead of time, and don't wait till the last minute. And so by the beginning of this execution phase that we're talking about now, have your transcripts in hand, have your test scores, done and submitted. Any other little housekeeping details, get those out of the way so you can clear your mind and just focus on the next step, which is essay. Now, in terms of essays, this is where you take that application strategy and apply it to choosing essay topics, choosing the stories for your application essays. And also, during your school due diligence, we've talked about it a couple of times, you've probably got a pretty good handle at this point about what the school's fit qualities are, right? The qualities that they value more than others. So your job really is to identify the personal and professional stories, and I emphasize a lot of applicants make the mistake of thinking, well, it's business school. I better just talk about business. I'm not going to talk about the not-for-profit work I did, or how I helped, how I was a leader amongst my friends when we all went on an important educational trip together. I mean, those things, those personal stories drawn from other aspects of your life are really important too. So back to the fit qualities, though. You're identifying the personal and professional stories that feature the capabilities and qualities that that school is looking for, right? And, this is good marketing. This is good marketing. It's not just telling them what you hear. You've really done a lot of thinking at this point and said, look, I know these are the qualities this school is looking for. And by the way, I have stories that show that I possess those qualities. So it's just common sense. And it's the key to the great execution on your application strategy to feature those fit qualities wherever possible. Back to the recommendation letters, right? This is the point with the recommendation letters where a great process leads to a great outcome, and admissions officers understand that recommendation letters, a good process really is a collaborative one, right? There's nothing wrong with giving your references some guidance. Maybe they've written 1,000 recommendation letters and they're kind of like, hey, listen, listen, Jim, listen, Jane, I've got it. Don't worry. I know what these schools are looking for. But if they don't, you should give them some guidance. You should help them to understand the expectations that these schools have, and you should support them, in whatever way it makes sense. And, for example, maybe you'll tell your recommenders about the fit qualities that you're trying to emphasize in your application and suggest ways that they can tailor their letters in the same way you're tailoring your resume and your essays for that school's application. Maybe they'll talk about a particular project that features one of the fit qualities that you're trying to feature. Now, MBA Prep School, by the way, we created an entire course on how to succeed in the recommendation letter process. So there are a lot of steps that you can follow to improve the outcome of your recommendation letters. And it's a tip here that you're getting because you tuned into this lecture that not a lot of your competition will know about. They'll give their references the forms or sign them up online and say best of luck. But you can follow a process and ensure a better outcome. Now we're moving into talking about the interviews, right? And most schools interview by invitation, right? They don't start interviewing candidates until after the application deadlines. They've looked at your application, they send you an invitation. But I'm mentioning interview prep now in the execution period here because a handful of programs, Kellogg, for instance, Tuck, they interview candidates prior to, or at least directly following the application deadline. So if you're applying to one of the programs that like Kellogg or like Tuck, you need to really start preparing for your interview at the same time that you're writing your essays and working on your reference letters and the other aspects of your application. So a number of people are caught off guard by this, so that's why I mention it now. Okay, so the final 4 weeks and the final step. It's going to be intense, right? It's the last mile of the marathon. And even if you've built a strong foundation, you followed every prep step that I just talked about, executing your application strategy flawlessly and pressing that submit button, it's a tough step. It's a tough step. So let's talk about that. Because there are a few things you can do. I'll give you a few tips on what you can do to reduce your anxiety in the last mile of the race. And in fact, some of you who are applying this year may already be nearing that last mile. So here are some things to keep in mind for you guys. Now, I've stressed the housekeeping before, and I'll stress it again. These details, the devil can be in the details. So, have every component of your application proofed at least 3 times by 3 different people. And a typo or two, don't lose sleep over it. It's not going to sink your chances. But a sloppy application with a bunch of typos and it could hurt you. And just remember this application. People have talked about this probably to you before in your interviewing resumes. In the same way, this entire application package you put together, it's a representation of you, and so you want it to sparkle. Some applicants enlist the help of professional editors, proofreaders. MBA Prep School, our company provides services like these if you're interested and want some outside help in the editing process, in the editing phase, with your resume, etc. Now, another step you'll want to take to ensure that your masterpiece, right, the masterpiece, isn't left on the virtual loading dock, is to submit everything a couple of weeks before the deadline. And there have been times in years past, this is my 5th season doing this, that a school server has gone down, something's gone wrong, and the applicant himself figures out, they missed a piece, that they missed an important piece of the puzzle, or one reference letter is kind of reference is lagging on writing a letter. Trying to shoot for getting everything in a couple of weeks just gives you a little bit of cushion. And also it might give you an early read. There's no just anecdotal evidence about this, but if a school practice is sort of first in, first read, well, who knows? You might find yourself getting an early read in the application review process, which isn't a bad thing. Now, okay, so you've pressed submit, you've submitted your application. Check in with your references, ensure they've submitted their letters. And this is another reason I suggest early deadlines for those references. Don't let them, don't give them the exact drop dead deadline date, because a reference letter that lags behind might shift you into a second round, which would be a shame. If you've done all the other work to have a reference letter come in too late, and suddenly instead of round 1, you're applying in round 2. That would be a shame. So. But let's talk about those references again. And it's just a little tip here, which is important. Send them a thank you note, but even more so, a thank you gift is probably in order. If you've been working with them and collaborating with them, and they've listened to your advice, they've done a lot of work for you. So don't forget to thank them. That's my little tip. I'm sure your mom would tell you the same. And okay, here's the fun part, right? You've taken all the MBA prep steps. You've done all this work. Take a 2-week vacation, relax, clear your mind, get back and reconnect with family and friends. But we're not quite done yet, right? Admissions interview. So. With again, I talked about preparing for admissions interviews a little bit earlier, but now with most schools, interview invitations are going to start coming out pretty quickly, and so you need to kind of figure out when that date is, and give yourself a good 3 or 4 weeks lead time to prepare for your interviews, and that way you'll ensure that you're fully prepared by interview day. So there they are, the 5 steps, and if you reflect on what I told you and all the work, and look at those steps, it might feel a little overwhelming. I understand that, but at a minimum, you're now conscious of how challenging this application process can be. And the good news is, now that you know the 5 steps to building an outstanding application, the 5 steps to being accepted by your dream school, you can take it a step at a time. And if you follow this process, you get to the top of that staircase, and this is important. You get to the top of that staircase knowing that you did everything you could to achieve the goal of getting into your dream school. So, and remember, of course, you don't have to do it all alone. MBA Prep School can help you. And in fact, let me give you a quick summary of the courses and services we offer, and then I'm going to answer your questions. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys have started sending your questions in, and we'll have a very interesting Q&A. So if you haven't sent your questions in for me, about applying, about business school applications. So why don't you start sending those in now while I tell you just a little bit more about MBA Prep School. So the central element of what we offer is called our core curriculum. And every student that registers as a core curriculum student has access to 5 comprehensive courses in a series, and they cover every facet of applying to business school, right? Our core curriculum covers what you're going to do before you apply to build a great foundation. We talk about foundation building and strengthening your application before you apply. A lot of people sign up with us 12 months or even more before they are planning on applying, so that they can figure out how to start thinking like an admissions officer and build a foundation for a great application. Now, the next series of our courses is application strategy, right? How to create a winning application strategy and answer those 5 questions that I told you about. Of course, we cover how to write outstanding essays. We have both pre-recorded lectures on prepping for your essays as well as live boot camp courses. There's optimizing your resume, your reference letters, your application forms, and how to ace the final, how to prepare for your admissions interview. So in addition to our core curriculum, we have a number of premium electives. And this is, again, giving yourself even that additional edge. So, for example, we have a course that's taught by one of the top admissions consultants out there who also happens to be a published novelist. And in his lecture, he teaches students how to take advantage of creative writing techniques to make their essays stand out. So it's very interesting stuff, and again gives you that extra edge. I mentioned before, but we had essay and editing resume services. We turn those around in about 24 hours or 72 hours, depending on how quickly you need that. And admissions consulting services, we call that total prep admissions consulting. So really we have a full, complete suite of services, and we'd love to work with you and help you get into your dream school. So if you'd like to learn more, you see hopefully you can see it on your screen, but I'll read it to you. Our URL is mbaprepschool.com. You can also write to us at info@mbaprepschool.com.